Hello and welcome to today's tutorial. My name is Anniken and today I'm going to show you how to unpick stitches for an afterthought heel if you haven't put in a length of waist yarn. So normally when I do an afterthought heel, when I get to where I want the heel to be, I knit half around in a piece of waist yarn. So I use a different sock yarn in a different colour or something like that, and I just knit half around in this waist yarn, then I carry on knitting in my sock yarn. But I was knitting these when I was at the cinema, so I got to kind of here before I realised how far I'd got. It's a very long film, so I knitted from about there to about there probably. So I had to work out where I wanted the heel to be after I finished the sock. So I've actually done the first sock. It looks weird with the heel like that when it's not on your feet, but when it's actually on your feet, it looks quite good. So I worked out where I wanted the heel to be on the first sock by measuring a sock I already had. I actually had one in progress here, which actually has a marker here. So on this one, I'd marked where I wanted the heel to be because I'd put in a waist yarn. I tried it on my foot as I was knitting it and worked out where I wanted the heel to be. And I put in a stitch marker and then I just measured that. I measured that on this sock and then I put in a marker. So that's the stitch I want to cut. So when you put in a waist yarn, it's fairly easy to just unpick the waist yarn and end up with live stitches. When you don't do that, it's a little bit more difficult. Now I do have a tutorial showing how to do this if you've done a wedge toe. So if you've done a wedge toe, like on this sock, a wedge toe is when your toe, the shape is shaped like a wedge. So the increases are either along the sides or I actually do them in the middle like that. So mine is slightly different, but there's a definite top and bottom of that toe. You don't really want it like that. That's the top and that's the bottom. So there is a definite top and bottom. And when you do that, you need the heel to line up with the bottom of the sock. Otherwise it's going to look weird. So when you do a toe like this, you really need to mark at least where the sides of your sock is or where your center stitch is, so you know where to pick up. On this sock, I've actually done a circular toe. So there is no top and bottom. The toe is the same all the way around. So it doesn't really matter where I put the heel. So this is how I knitted this on magic loop. So I had half the stitches on one needle and half on the other. And that's why I've got this sort of slight crease and it's kind of lying flat like that. So I've just put a marker in the middle here and that's going to be my middle of the row. So I'm going to cut that stitch now. So I'm going to grab my needle and I'm going to leave the marker in just to make sure I cut the right stitch. There we go. So you just want to cut that stitch. I prefer using small sharp scissors because that's a little bit more, make sure you don't cut more than you're supposed to. Now, don't just like pull it because then the stitches will quickly start unraveling. Right, I can't even see where I cut it now. Where is it? Oh, there. So now I'm going to start picking up those stitches. So I just got to work out where I cut it. That's the stitch. So what I need to do is pick up stitches above, below and above where I cut it. Now I knitted these from the toe up, so on the below where I cut it on this side towards the toe, I'll be able to pick up 32 stitches because I had 64 stitches in total and I want to pick up half of those stitches. So because I knitted toe up, I'm going to pick up 32 on this side and it'll be 31 on the top, because the stitches you pick up on the top are actually the loops between the stitches you pick up on the bottom. If I worked it from the top down, from the cuff down, it would have been the other way around. So I'm going to, it's a little bit difficult because it's unfortunately fell on this dark blue bit, which is a bit annoying. On my other sock it was pink, I think. So I've just got to kind of get started. Why is that? Right. For some reason I can't get it to unravel, so I'm just going to pull it a little bit just to make sure. Maybe I didn't cut all the way through. Let's take the scissors, there we go. Just making sure I've cut all the way through, and then I'm going to put my needle in there. And I'm using double pointed needles to do this. You can use a circular needle, that's absolutely fine. But it's actually a little bit easier doing it on double pointed needles. Okay, there we go. That's the end of my needle. That's the end of my yarn. So that green stitch is the first one at the top. Once you get going, it's okay, but it's just getting started that's a little bit tricky. Okay, now one thing you have to be a little bit careful is that the yarn will unravel in both directions. So you don't want to start here and pick up all the stitches in one direction, because then where you've actually cut it, you'll end up with a tiny end. So what I do is I cut it in the middle, then I pick up half the stitches that way and half that way, then I get a tail either end that I can weave in. Because if I picked up all the stitches going in one direction here, I wouldn't have any stitches to weave in. So I'm just going to pick up a few stitches here because it just secures my needle. I'm hoping I've gone into the right row. Yes, I think that's okay. Let's have a look. It's a little bit more difficult on this one than it was on the first sock. I did actually record the first sock, but my lens was a bit smudged, so it looked a little bit in soft focus, so I decided to redo it. I hope the light's okay. It's about 3 o'clock in the afternoon and it's a very dark, dull day here in Cornwall today. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm actually just putting the needles into the stitches as I reveal them. So on the bottom, so I'm following kind of the working yarn around, and as I unpick a stitch, as one stitch becomes available, I will put my needle in. Okay, so let me just show you here. Oops. So I'm going to just go into a few stitches here. So here I'm coming into this navy blue row here, and I got pink above it, so it's a little bit easier to see here. So I'm just going to go into that navy blue row for a few stitches. Let's see how many we've got. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11. And then I'm going to unpick that, and then that goes through that stitch. Is the next one at the top. So the yarn that I'm picking half around, and it weaves in and out of the stitches. So I've just got to follow that. So now that yarn goes into that stitch, so that's the next one I'm going to catch on the top. I do like to pick up a few on the bottom half and then do the top stitch by stitch. That's just the way I like to do it. You can put your needle into all the stitches first if you like, and then unpick it like this. So what I'm going to do now, so I've got a few stitches on that side, is I'm actually going to go back here, because what I'm worried about is that this tiny short yarn tail here is going to start unraveling in the other direction. So I'm just going to pick up a couple of stitches. I'm going to slide the stitches back to the end of my double point needle. This is what's so good about using a double pointed needle, because it does make it easier to do this bit. So I'm just going to put that one on there from the bottom, and then that green one from the top, and then that green one from the top, and that, oh, that one's just unraveled one row. I'm going to just put it on for now, then I'll fix it. So that one just unraveled one row. Sometimes I will just put on the needle just to make sure I don't unravel more stitches. Sometimes I will fix it straight away. It just depends on whether I think I'm going to lose more stitches or not. Okay, so I'm not going to go any further over there. We'll go back and carry on in the other direction. Okay, so you want to try and keep working quite close to your needle tip, so it's easier to put the needle into the stitch without being so close that your stitches slide off the needle. The needles I'm using are the same size I knitted the socks in. You can use slightly smaller needles if you want to, but if they're too much smaller, then your stitches might slide out. If you're worried about doing this on a real sock, for the first time, you can always practice on a little swatch. You can just knit a tube, don't have to knit a sock, just knit a tube for that much, and then try and cut it somewhere in the middle and pick half a round. It's a little bit nerve-wracking doing this the first time, I'm not going to lie, that I felt that as well, but the more you do it, the better you get. I do prefer to put in a waste yarn if I can, because then it's just easier, because then I don't have to cut my knitting. I can just undo the waste yarn and put my stitches on a needle, and it is a lot easier and quicker. Right, let's see how many stitches we've got now. So I'm going to count on the bottom, because this is the side I'm going to have 32 stitches. 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 17. So I'm going to do one more here, and then I'll do the rest in the other direction, because I've got a fairly long tail on this side now. I want to make sure I got a tail that's long enough that I can weave it in. Okay, that one, and then we'll do that one. Okay, now I'm going to, so that yarn, working yarn goes through the stitch that's still on the top needle, so I need to pull that out, and then it goes through this stitch that's on the bottom needle, so I need to undo that. And then I want to leave that there, because I don't want to pick any more stitches from this side. I'm going to leave that tail on the outside. Then I'm going to slide my stitches back and go in the opposite direction. So let's see how many stitches we ended up with. 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. So we want to get to about 32. Okay, I might turn this around actually, because I find it easier to go that way. So whether I end up with these stitches sitting the correct way on the needles or twisted doesn't really matter, as long as you can tell the difference between a stitch that's twisted and a stitch that's sitting the correct way for your style of knitting. That's absolutely fine, it doesn't really matter. So because I did half the stitches in one direction, half in the other, I might find that my stitches on one half are in the opposite direction than the other, so half the needle might be twisted. Doesn't really matter. What I do when I knit the first round is I just very carefully check that all my stitches are sitting the right way. So I'm just going to go into a few stitches on this side, because I just find that easier. And then now I'm in this bit where there's like several rows of navy blue together, which makes it a little bit difficult to see what I'm doing. Probably difficult for you to see what I'm doing, but it's also difficult for me to see what I'm doing, especially when I've got a camera between me and the needles. But I'm basically just follow this working yarn, which goes, it goes through each stitch twice, so you've got 2 chances to catch the stitch. Goes through there, and then it goes through this one again. So you've got plenty of chances to, you know, catch each stitch, because it goes through each stitch twice. I don't know why that was such a difficult thing to say. Okay, now I've got the browny burgundy bit on the top, so it's becoming a little bit easier, and I got green on the bottom needle. Okay, I think I wanted to stop and count in a minute, just to make sure I don't pick up too many, because that will be a bit awkward, because then I've got to try and knit them back up. Okay, let's stop there. So I'm going to turn it around. So this bit here is the side I want 32. I don't think I've got 32 yet. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26. Okay. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26. So I want 6 more on that needle. 1. I don't find it very easy to count when I'm filming, because I talk in between counting and then I lose track of my counting. Okay. Okay, Okay, so that's 4 stitches on that needle. 2, 3, 4. If this yarn gets a bit tangled, you want to try and avoid cutting this because you do want to tail either side to weave in. Otherwise, you're going to end up with gaps in the sides of your sock and it could unravel, which you don't want that. I don't know, is that the 4th stitch I've unpicked? I don't know, I've lost count. Okay, so I'm going to unpick that one there, and then there, and there. Okay. Then I'm going to just count quickly again. I've got a feeling I might need one more stitch. So that's the side where I want 32. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, 31. One more stitch. Right, let's get that next stitch. 32, so that's 32 on that side, and then I'm just going to check on the other side because I only want 31 on the other side, because the loops on this side is the loops between these stitches. So these are the actual stitches I knitted into, and then these are the loops in between those stitches. So just make sure I don't unpick too many here. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30. I want one more on that side. Yeah, because the yarn is actually still going through the last stitch I picked up on that side, so I need to pick up one more here. Because once I picked up the next one here, there we go, then I can pull the yarn out of that green stitch. It also goes through that next stitch, but it goes through that twice, and then I want to pull it out of that blue stitch, brown stitch that's on that needle. Brown burgundy, I'm not sure what color it is. There we go. So now it goes back into that green one, but I don't want to unpick any more because I've got the right number of stitches now. So I should have 31 on this side. So let's just double count. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, 31. If you accidentally unpick too many stitches, so you end up with one extra stitch or something, then don't worry about it. Just decrease it on the first round so you get down to the stitch count you need. It won't make any difference. You'll probably get away with 2 as well. More than that and you start getting into trouble. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, 32. So there we go. I got 32 on this side and I got 31 on that side. So when I start knitting now, I'm going to pick up a couple of stitches in the gaps either side so I don't get a hole. And then on the second round, I do that on the first round, and then on the second round, I will just decrease so I get 32 stitches on each side. So I'll pick up 2 in the gap and put onto that needle. So I'll end up with 34 here. So I'll decrease 2 stitches on this needle, 1 each end on round 2, and then on this one I've got 31, so I'll pick up 1 in that gap, 1 in that gap, so I'll have 33. So I'll only decrease 1 on that needle to get down to 32. Then I'll just carry on knitting my heel as normal. I'm going to change these stitches onto this needles onto circular needles so I can do magic loop because I prefer doing that. But I do think double point needles are easier to use for picking up. If you haven't got double pointed needles, you can use your circular needles as well. Okay, thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions, please ask below this video. You can learn more about how to do socks with Afterthought heels, both from the cuff down and the toe up in my Aventura's online sock course. I'll put the link to that below this video. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. And if you're already a subscriber, thank you very much for supporting me. I really appreciate it. Tell me if you've ever tried to do this and ask any questions you have below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.